Randy Ferguson here. Well, I want to thank you first of all for taking a moment to watch this video. It says a lot about you that you want to explore the LCA. It says that you're at a place in your life where you're interested in really closing that gap between maybe where you are and who you were meant to be. So welcome. I want to start with a story that's really about you. Several years ago, I was in Bangkok. I was working with a leadership team for a major car manufacturer. And afterwards, I had a chance to be the tourist. And I came upon this temple. And as I walked in, I saw on one side was this giant statue of Buddha. And next to it was this glass case with these chunks of clay in it. I thought that was interesting. So I went up and I saw this little story printed out, and turns out back in the 1950s, the Thai government was building a freeway to Bangkok. And in building this freeway, they had to physically relocate this ancient Buddhist temple. And so they brought in all the heavy equipment, and at one point they were lifting this giant clay statue of Buddha, and it started to crack. So the head monk said, "Set it down," which they did. And that night, the monk took a flashlight, he shined it on that crack, and to his amazement, something from inside the statue shined back. Well, curiosity got the better of this guy. He took a chisel and a hammer, he started hammering on this thing, and after a couple of hours, he stood in front of a 10.5-foot tall, 4.5-ton solid gold statue of Buddha. Single biggest piece of gold on the planet. Well, of course, they researched this thing, and they discovered that 300 years earlier, the Burmese army was coming south, attacking what was then called Siam. The Siamese monks knew this, so they covered up their precious gold statue with clay. Good news, when the army came through, they did not take the statue. Bad news, they did take anybody who knew the secret. So for 300 years, people are walking by doing their daily activities, not knowing that this far beneath the surface was solid gold. When I heard that story, it moved me, because isn't this true about us as human beings? Who we are is so sacred, so filled with potential. We know that. And yet we live in a culture that teaches us so much of what doesn't work. And as a result, we start gathering the fear, the guilt, the resentment, the hurt from the past, the self-judgment, all the gunk. And then we try to go through life carrying all this stuff, and no wonder it can feel exhaustive at times. The LCA is committed to working with people in a way where they drop this stuff, not intellectually, but experientially, so that they feel a weight lifted from their shoulders. And it's not so much that we give something as it is that we work with people to remove something. Who you are is already magnificent. No seminar can give you that. We want to reveal it. What's possible is a remarkable, enormous, wonderful quality of life. And it's there for the taking. So what this video is about is sharing with you the basics of the LCA so you can take a look and see if this is something that you want to pursue or not. Either way is fine. We just want to really tell the truth about it. So where did this begin? Back in 1981, I fell madly in love with a woman from Aspen, Colorado. Later that year, we got married. In 1983, my daughter Heather was born. We had this beautiful family. I was going full speed with my real estate investing career. And then around 1985, 86, I entered into what turned out to be a very dark night of the soul. It was important for me at that time to learn some lessons. I didn't know it, but at the time, I had to learn some lessons about priorities and what really mattered. And I got the lessons in a tough way. I ended up going through bankruptcy, foreclosure, losing our beautiful 6-bedroom home, all my investment real estate, my 59 Jag. And worst of all, I lost my wife and my daughter through divorce. They moved to California, and I'll tell you, that Ryder truck driving off, I felt like it was running over my heart. It was an extremely painful time, but it was also a cathartic time. It was a time when something was being awakened in Randy. And interestingly enough, my brother, who does similar work in Houston, was going through something very similar. He was an attorney, a divorce attorney. And so we started talking with each other. And we realized that, when we stopped blaming our wives, we started to take responsibility. We started to ask the question, why did this happen? Well, we started to realize some dynamics, some principles that we'd never been taught before. And then we started to share these because they were so meaningful. And we started to share these with people around us. They started to have breakthroughs. And one thing led to another. We ended up teaching seminars, and Bill gave up his law practice. I gave up my real estate career, and we've never looked back. Interestingly enough, when we did that, all these forces came together that we would never have been smart enough to orchestrate. Bill wrote a book from an attorney's point of view called How to Heal a Painful Relationship. Oprah got hold of it, flew him to Chicago, and that became a bestseller. I ended up going through a psychology program, got my master's in spiritual psych with a counseling emphasis. And then I also had the opportunity to teach higher level leadership skills to executives all over the world, in Spain, Germany, Thailand, extensively in Mexico and throughout the United States. And this just trained me immeasurably. Add to that, being able to work with over 2,000 people individually, coaching them on how to create extraordinary lives. And also, I had the privilege of leading over 1,000 individual seminars, personal development seminars. All of this came together to give me the wherewithal to lead an extraordinary, life-changing weekend and 7-week course we call the Love, Courage, and Achievement Project, LCA for short. This work is based on 4 fundamental principles. Number 1, that who you are is already sacred, already precious beyond words, limitless potential. And number 2, that even though that's so, we tend to gather in a dysfunctional culture. The fear, the guilt, the resentment, the hurt from the past, the self-judgment, the false beliefs, all the baggage. And then we navigate through life carrying all this stuff, and it's exhaustive. It feels like a backpack full of rocks. The third principle is that there is a way to have this clay come tumbling down, to drop it, not so much intellectually. None of this is rocket science, but experientially, where you feel a weight lifted from your shoulders. Let me give you an example of this. I might work with a gentleman who has harbored resentment for his dad for a couple decades. And he's at a place in his life where he realized that's not doing any good at all. In fact, it's costing him tremendously. And he wants to get through it. And he realizes that forgiveness isn't about condoning past behavior. What his dad did wasn't okay. But it is about setting himself free. So now he's ready, and I take him step by step through the exercises where he lets go of that resentment, like I said, experientially. And in the process, he may be crying his eyes out, snot dripping from his nose. But you know what? The atmosphere, the environment is so safe. This is his chance for a breakthrough. And it's interesting. There's so much support there that as you look around the room, everybody's grabbing for tissues. Because when one person has a breakthrough, we all have a breakthrough. When he's finished, I'll ask him, so how does that feel? And the single most common word people use to describe their experience of freedom is lighter. I just feel lighter. So this is a process of getting lighter and lighter and lighter, which is in a way what enlightenment is. It's lightening up. The fourth principle is that there's something called the experience of love. Take a look. Just recall for a moment a time when you were in the presence of somebody who really truly loved you. Not a clingy love, but a genuine love. And when you were in that presence of unconditional acceptance and deep appreciation, What else were you experiencing? When I ask audiences, their reply is, I was experiencing a joy, a peace, an aliveness, a vitality. I felt like whatever I did was okay. A sense of being respected and cared for. There was a sense of creativity and aliveness. Well, one of the things people discover is that what determines our quality of life is very different than what we're taught in our culture. What we're taught is that what creates quality of life is standard of living. That if we just get everything arranged the right way, if I get the right income and the right mate and the kids are behaving a certain way and I have the right house and car and deodorant, then by golly, I'm going to feel this wonderful quality of life. But you know what? You can't count on standard of living to determine quality of life 100% of the time, can you? Now, don't get me wrong, I love standard of living stuff, but it can't deliver what the experience of love can. If you take a look when you were in the presence of somebody who loved you absolutely, what was present was quality of life off the charts. What gets restored in the LCA is our ability to create this incredibly high quality of life from the inside out. Yes, we've got to handle the outside things, but it starts from in here. We live in a culture where we're so knowledgeable about the externals and we know so little about how to navigate inside. You're going to get that back. Another key piece is that people start to discover that they have a relationship with self. Now, again, we're not taught this in our culture. I've got a relationship with my parents, my coworkers, my kids, my neighbors. What do you mean relationship with self? But you do. There is a way that you treat you, that you speak to you, that you relate to you. And when people really get this, their next thought is, and you know what? That relationship could use some work. So what people realize is that their relationship with self determines something called self-esteem. Now, self-esteem isn't just about feeling good, although that's reason enough. Self-esteem determines our productivity in life. Take a look. When your self-esteem is off the charts, you set high goals and you're very likely to achieve them. When self-esteem's in the toilet, you know what? I don't even want to set goals. And if I did, the likelihood of success is diminished tremendously. So as you start to build relationship with self, you start to become more productive. This starts to impact your bank statement. It is very, very practical. Now, maybe you've already got fantastic self-esteem, but what difference would it make if you could crank that up a few notches? In fact, one of the things that people learn in the LCA is how do you master attitude? We know intuitively that attitude impacts everything. What if you discovered an actual process where your attitude was at a peak state regardless of the circumstances, that you became, for the most part, unshakable in your life? How would that impact your productivity? How would that impact your relationships? How would that impact your finances? How do we actually make these breakthroughs happen? Well, there's a process. The first step is something you're doing. It's watching this video to see if there's something here that speaks to you. The second is to set up what we call a breakthrough session with one of the LCA consultants. And this is a breakthrough time where we get to go over your life, lasered in on your situation. And before you actually sit down and meet with this individual, what you're going to do is complete a questionnaire. And there's two key questions I want to share with you in that questionnaire that are really quite revealing. The first is, what are the unworkabilities in your life? Now, as the word would imply, an unworkability is any area of your life that's not working as well as you'd like. But it could be internal, fear, guilt, resentment, hurt from the past, self-judgment, as I shared. Or it could be external, career, relationship, finances, living environment, family issues. So you list as many items as you possibly can on the questionnaire. And then the second question is, what are the dreams of your heart? The things that you would love to have or be or do in your lifetime. And you actually send these to your LCA consultant. And then when you sit down together, he's or she is going to have all the pieces they need in order to create what we call a life strategy checklist. This is going to be a plan that will resonate with you as practical, doable, a very real plan. And the interesting thing is that when you see solutions you've never seen before, when you see dynamics that you've never seen before, and you see a way to create an extraordinary life, what people get back is something called hope. In the breakthrough session, you also get all your questions answered about this work. And together, you and the LCA consultant will determine whether this work is right for you or if it's not right for you. And I'll say this right now, that unless we get two really strong green lights, we don't move forward. And that's absolutely okay. So, assuming in your breakthrough session, you're registered, you're ready to go, you've got both those green lights going, then the next step is the LCA weekend. That Friday night, people show up and, it's a very special person who's there. The naysayers, the people who aren't ready for a breakthrough, they're not there. And the people who are willing and committed, and you can feel that anticipation and energy in the room. Friday night, we create an atmosphere of safety. We go over our confidentiality, all our agreements. We go through some exercises that very powerfully bring in the experience of what's possible. So that's Friday. Saturday morning, everybody comes back. And Saturday's about doing the house cleaning. In our culture, what we're taught is that if something's painful, get as far away from that as you can, as quickly as you can. Find the addiction du jour, but don't experience the pain. Well, anything we're unwilling to experience runs our lives. So Saturday, what we do is we do an about face, and we go full speed in the direction of what we've been running from. And an amazing thing is discovered by all, and what that is that it has been in our avoidance that we've created and maintained the suffering. When you really face it head on, and you're willing to experience whatever you need to experience to get on the other side, you create freedom. The bully starts running from you. And so Saturday's about going after what we've been running from in our life. And another quality to this work is the LCA tools. When you come in Friday evening, you get a workbook. And that workbook is filled with step-by-step tools for major breakthroughs. So we go through one process after another, and you just start getting freer and freer and freer as the day goes on. By Saturday night, you're ready for a major component of the LCA, and that is the healing of core issues. A core issue is a fundamental judgment that you made against yourself at a time of hurt, typically growing up in childhood. You can't grow up in this culture and not get slammed. And everyone in that room, and I know it's true about you as well, we've all been hurt, and not just a little bit. Stuff happens. Our parents, for whatever reason, might not be getting along, and we're upset about that. We don't get our homework done. You go to school, your teacher gets angry at you because you didn't do the work, and then you're walking outside, you drop your books in front of that cute kid that you were really interested in. You feel totally embarrassed. You're at your recital. You forget the music. Stuff like that happens, and we get hurt. And what we do is we start to take on judgment against self. And it sounds like I'm no good. I'm stupid. I'm ugly. I don't matter. I'm not good enough. I don't have what it takes. I'm just a loser. And of course, none of those are true. But when you take a thought and you imbue it with intense emotion, it becomes a catalyst in your life, something that really starts to mold your identity. And then as we grow up, your core issues act like sore spots. when X happens out there, something gets triggered in here, and that hot button moves us into a place of upset. Well, one of the most powerful parts of our entire weekend and 7-week course is discovering exactly what those core issues are. And you know what? That's not, again, an intellectual process. You don't figure out your core issue. The way you find your core issue is in your heart, because that's where it lives. It will be the word or words that, if it was true, we know it's not, but if it was true, would hurt the most. So people discover their core issues, and when they do, they don't like it one bit. You know, I hate this. You know, give me that guy's core issue, but take it away. Yeah. And then you know you've hit the mother lode. That's the thing that's the tail that's been wagging the dog. That's what's been sabotaging your life more than anything else. But now you got a grip on it. The next step, we take you through a process where you heal it in your heart. And the space in the room is off the charts. People feel a freedom that they've never felt since early childhood. Well, Sunday afternoon, everybody comes back, and you look at their faces, they look like kindergartners. They're beaming, they're radiant, they're bouncing off the walls. Sunday afternoon is why I do this work, to see this in people. It's the most beautiful thing. But then there's a realization. You know, it's like, Randy, I feel so good, but tomorrow I'm going to be going right back into the culture. How do I maintain this? And that's an important question. See, no matter how fantastic the weekend is, it's not going to be enough in itself. We discovered that over years of doing this work, that if this work is not sustainable, well, what the heck good is it? You know, it's just a good time. So that's why we don't let people just do the weekend or just do the 7-week course. You need them both together. The 7-week course is where you integrate this into your life so you can sustain the breakthrough. So another thing we do Sunday is we break into small champion teams. Now, each small champion team is led by a champion team leader who's been through this program, volunteering their time, and has also been through a very special leadership training. And these champion teams become fiercely committed to each other's breakthroughs. You leave Sunday totally charged, ready to make it happen. But like I said, that's not enough. The next step in the process is what we call Celebration Wednesday, and it's an integral part of the weekend itself. I'll be sharing that Wednesday night a tool for how do you be extraordinarily effective in a dysfunctional culture. And it's one of the very few evenings where you get to bring friends and family. And the energy that's in the room really gives them a taste of what might be possible in the area of breakthroughs in their lives. The next step is the 7-week course. This is where we integrate it in the real world. So the same people who were in the weekend meet one evening a week for 7 consecutive weeks. And each of those evenings we have big group time and we have small group time. In the big group time, I'm going to be sharing new tools, new dynamics that are essential for leading an extraordinary life in this culture. In the small group time, we're going to have, like I said, our champion team leaders who'll be supporting you like crazy. So let's go over the topics. Each of those Thursday evenings will have a different topic. The first one is on how do you get your power back? Out of our core issues, out of our unworkability, we have created tremendous challenges in our life that weigh upon us. And it can feel overwhelming. It can feel very stressful at times. You know what that feels like? Well, how do you shift from having all of that weighing on you where you feel underneath it to being on top of it, where you're running the show? You know, it's that attitude of, oh my gosh, there's some boxes in the basement, let me at them. I've got to handle the checking account, let's go. There's an issue in relationship, let's handle that. And you start taking charge of your life in the most beautiful way. The second evening is about how do you move through upsets in minutes instead of years or never. There's a technology to that, and you're going to master that. The third evening is all about relationships. How do you create masterful relationships from the inside out? One thing LCAers discover is that relationships are a mirror of where you are in your consciousness, where you are on the wisdom curve. And that's the good news, because as you start to grow in who you are, watch what happens on the outside. Truly, what we create externally begins with what's going on internally. The fourth evening is about your relationship with self and your relationship with your body. Again, we're not taught that you have a relationship with those things, but you do. And how do you master that? How do you have self-esteem go through the roof? Again, not in an arrogant way, but in a beautiful, humble-based way. And your relationship with your body. How do you start to move in partnership with you instead of against you? How do you move to a whole higher level of health from the inside out? The fifth evening is about our finances. It's about our prosperity. How do you shift from a place of desperation and fear and stress to a place of abundance? Again, it's an inside job. People discover they've got a financial thermostat, that when things get too bad, boy, we get busy. But when things get too good, we kind of slow down and we live in this range. Well, what if you could do this? What if you could shift that? What if you could create phenomenal prosperity? The sixth evening is about something called life purpose. What if you could discover what you love doing more than anything in the world? Find a way to do it in a way that makes a difference in the world and in a way that is absolutely financially viable. What if you could do that? Well, you can. Well, let's just discover what it is. There's a process for that. It's actually one of the most important things you can do in your lifetime, is discover your life purpose. And then our seventh evening is about how do you create a life of celebration? And, this work is very spiritual because it's about the essence of who we are, but it's not religious. Now, I'm a Christian, but this work is open to people of any faith, of any race, of any economic strata, of any education, of any gender orientation. It's open to anybody who's really ready to roll up their sleeves in an effective program and create breakthroughs. How do you actually create a relationship with that in a way that supports who you are in the world? When you think about it, having this source, which is all-knowing, all-powerful, all-present, and all-loving, is not a bad partner to have. How do you actually make that happen in a way that's authentic and not just another belief system? How do you do that? And wherever you are in the faith spectrum, what would be the possibility of taking that to an even higher, more fulfilling level? In the small group time, here's what happens. We have something called promise pages. What we've noticed is that people will give and keep a promise to a committed partner, to people who care, that they won't even make to themselves. Isn't that true? So promise pages, you start to create a strategy for handling your unworkabilities, for going for the dreams. Yeah, we've got to do the inner work, but we've got to do the outer work too, right? So what happens is each week you're making these promises. They may be a little outside your comfort zone, but that's where we grow. And you start to create measurable results so that people are coming up to you. They're going, why are you so happy? Why do you have so much energy? Well, it's because you're not backing down from life anymore. You're embracing it fully and you're creating successes along the way. There's so much more to share, but that's the essence of the weekend, the Celebration Wednesday, and the 7-week course. Now, of course, at the end of this, we have one heck of a party, the Friday after our last Thursday, and there's so much to celebrate at that point. Sometimes people want to know, what quantifiable results am I really going to experience in this? What's happened in the past? Well, we ask people coming in to take a quiz, and after the 7 weeks, we ask them to take the same quiz, and here's some results that are really fairly typical. An increase in joy and laughter of 17.86%. Increase in your ability to finish projects and eliminate clutter, 20.83%. Increase in positive personal energy, 24%. Increase in feeling peace, 25.93%. Increase in feeling vibrancy and aliveness, 26.92%. Increase in your ability to express boundaries, 31.82%. Increase in contentment for life and relationships, 34.78%. Decrease in negative thinking, 36.36%. Increase in your ability to accept compliments, 38.46%. Increase in self-caring, 57.89%. Increase in your ability to release anger, hurt, resentment, and guilt, 65%. And decrease in money worry, 71.43%. Now, often we have people flying in from out of state or out of the country. They come in, they do the weekend, they have to be physically present for that. But for the Thursdays, we will webinar the event, and then you just get on your phone and you conference call in with your team so you can still do the entire LCA program. So how does this all work financially? Well, one of our rules is that nobody gets turned down because of the money. If you have that passion in your heart to do the work, we will find a way. And it's interesting because a lot of LCAers who have moved to a whole different level of their prosperity and financial abundance discovered that doing the LCA was the very thing needed in order to create that breakthrough. But you got to start somewhere, right? This is something that you're interested in pursuing. The next step is to call 303-989-2605 and schedule your time with an LCA consultant. Prepare your questionnaire. Send it to them in advance so they can be prepared for you so you can get the absolute most out of that time together. Let me wrap up with a story. Maybe you have heard of that Armenian earthquake that happened in 1989. It was 8.9 on the Richter scale, about as bad as it could get. And there was this young Armenian father who, after the tremors, he looked around. His house was by a miracle still standing. His wife was on the floor, but she was okay. He recalled that he would always say to his son, "Arman, I will always be there for you. I will always be there for you." So when the tremors stopped, he ran out the front door, he ran down the street, turned the corner, and there where used to stand a 2-story schoolhouse was nothing but a pile of rubble with all those kids inside. Can you imagine what he must have felt in that instant? Well, the only thing he knew to do was to go to a corner of the rubble and start digging where he knew his son's home room was, and he dug for 12 hours, 24 hours, 36 hours. On the 38th hour, he moved a piece of debris, and he thought he heard something. There was this opening, and he said, "Is there anybody down there?" And in that instant, he heard the sweetest sound he ever heard in his life. "Dad, is that you?" And so he said, "Yeah, it is. Can you work your way up to the light?" And the little boy said, "I can, but I want the others to come out first." "What others?" He said, when the building collapsed, it made a pocket. There's 14 of us here. And they all wanted to give up. They said, "Nobody's coming." But I said, "No, that's not true. Because my dad said, I will always be there for you." Is there something in you worth digging for? If I've shared something in this video that speaks to you and you want to take the next step, then make the call. Just call 303-989-2605 and set up that time, that breakthrough session with your LCA consultant. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking this time, for being introspective, and really, really look forward to meeting you in person and watching the breakthroughs. So take care and God bless.